Hello everyone, I'm Dr. Tripti Sharan and I'm a gynecologist at BLK Super Speciality Hospital. I'm also an author of several women-centric books. Lately, there has been an unprecedented rise of violence against doctors. It has continued unabated despite the sacrifice in COVID times. Fearful and defensive doctors are not in the best interests of a country that suffers from scarcity of doctors. There is an immediate need to rectify this. One way of doing so is to increase awareness amongst people about the journey of doctors so that they can have more empathy towards the medical fraternity. And that is where my book, House of Doctor, comes in. It tells you about how doctors survive in a redundant infrastructure, poor resources, a whole world full of disease and dread, hope and anxiety. It tells you about their endless studies, the long duty hours with little reprieve, and the pressure on the psyche to be always right. Medicine has its slow, but there can be no high greater than saving lives. This book tells you about the tenacity of doctors to smile, to laugh, to love, and revel in their profession while spreading hope and cheer. So let's understand our healers better so that they can heal us better. Please, you're welcome into the house of doctors. And while you do so, please remember to wear your mask and stay safe. May God heal us all. Thank you so much.
Spontaneous overflow of emotions. William Wordsworth. Welcome back to Studio 2. We've now reached our last session for the day here in Studio 2. We welcome our esteemed panel for Calling Over Water, book launch, readings, and conversations. Our first speaker, Priya Sarukkai Chabrai. Priya Saruki Chabria is a multiple award-winning poet, translator, and writer who's acclaimed for her radical aesthetics across her 10 books of poetry, speculative fiction, literary nonfiction, novel, and as editor of 2 poetry anthologies. Her work is translated into several languages. She's translating hymns from classical Tamil, writing poetry, and collating her short stories. She edits poetry at Sangam. Our next speaker is Alvin Pang. Dr. Alvin Pang was named 2005 Young Artist of the Year by National Arts Council, Singapore. In 2020, he was awarded a PhD in writing from RMT IT University. For his contributions, he has conferred the Singapore Youth Award in 2007 and the JCCI Foundation Education Award in 2008. He is listed in the Oxford Companion to Modern Poetry in English. Dr. Anjali Purohit. Dr. Anjali Purohit is an artist, writer, poet, translator, and curator. She is the author of 2 books. Her writing has featured in several anthologies and literary journals, including International Gallery, Cold Noon, Anthology of Contemporary, and others. She is the founder and curator of the Cappuccino Adda. She is presently working on her forthcoming book of poetry. George. George is a poet, translator, and memoirist. He's been awarded many prizes and honors. He was shortlisted for the PEN Ackery Prize for the photographer at 16. He was also awarded winner James Tite Black Prize for a biography in 2020. I request our panelists to take this session forward.
Hear you.
Yes.
You're mute. Yeah.
Thank you, Pranaya, and thank you, Pune International Literary Festival, for hosting this very special session where I'm so happy to have Alvin Pang and George Zertis to join me in celebrating Priya Sarukai Chabria's really, really wonderful book, Calling Over Water. So this, Priya, can you hold up your copy? Also, this is the official release of this fabulous book, and tonight we will be speaking about this book. Congratulations, Priya. Really wonderful. So, uh, you deserve a hug from all of us for really giving us this really a book that we will treasure for a long, long time, and also pass on as an heirloom to our children. Because honestly, this is the emotions in this book are something that ought to be passed on to generations. Mm, we actually Priya's work, all of Priya's work, and especially the work in this book, I feel has so much luminosity and depth. Whenever I read Priya's poetry, I feel like though I cannot swim, but I feel like a deep sea diver who goes deep down into the sea and then looks at the light that falls from above. And that is the luminosity that I'm talking about in Priya's work. So, without spending more time, let us dive in. And first, this is a wonderful book. And Priya, I'd like to, two questions I'd like to ask you. One is, what is the significance of the title Calling Over Water? And the second question is that the book has been structured in three parts. The first part is called Unraveling. The second part is called Are There Answers Without Questions? And the third part is Traveling. So, Priya, these two questions are something that have intrigued me, and I'm sure so many of our readers. So, could you throw some light on that?
Really want to thank the three of you for being here. It's very, very special for me to have you guys here. I am so happy, really deeply happy. So that first. And then also to thank the Pune International Film Festival, Literary Festival, and Manjari Prabhu, and my publishers, Pujwala, Shruti and Hemant Divate, who are also here, I believe. So thank you all. And to plunge into or dive into the work as, thank you for that beautiful metaphor, Anjali. Why the title? I don't think there's one particular reason we can ascribe, but I do know that the last frames of a film made in 1957 by the Japanese director Genji Mizoguchi called Sanshou Dayu, Sanshou the Bailiff, was haunting me. It's at the end of it, there is this woman who was wonderful, beautiful, etc. Now she's virtually destitute. She's on the seashore and she's calling at the seashore across water to her lost daughter. But I think this is just one of the reasons. The others could be, of course, that we always we always perform rituals and rites near the water, riverbeds, seabeds. So much of it is connected with that. Incantations, all that happen near water. And there is, of course, in the Bhakti tradition, the mystic tradition, the idea of crossing to the other shore. I think that was also playing up. And yes, my father was in the Merchant Navy. And I think perhaps that came in somewhere. And finally, I think it's because water is in a sense nomadic. And I think this book was so much about travel and change and journeys that it just came together. And now to move to the second part of your question about the structure. When I write poems, it's a little like, I think maybe others do this too. You're like many poets may be feeling they're like trees almost shedding leaves, and the poems just pile up, and then somehow you put it together in a manuscript after some time. I know I had a lot of these poems with me for a long time, but for some reason I was sleeping on them. Yet, why did I structure it in these three parts? I think there are two pivots here. One is this Chinese word xiao, which is summoning, and it goes into xiaoyin. It's an autonomous word in the sense that it means calling someone out of a retreat and also sending a person into retreat. And the second pivot, I think, is the word wanderlust. And there you think it is, of course, pleasure, beauty, sense of discovery of other places, and therefore also yourself. But there is also something else with travel. You can also travel to flee. And I think both these aspects were there. And in many ways, this book is, for me, it's like a door which opens both ways, so that I get the light from outside coming in and coloring me, as it were, and my moods or my emotions or intensities pouring out and coloring the landscape. I think there is this duality. So 3 movements. The first is unraveling, poems of grief, basically. What should I say? With the loss of parents, or, you feel desolate. You feel like a tree, a lone tree, a thorn tree, maybe dew speckled, alone. And yet you have to move on. So, and there is also, I think, a sense of loss of identity. When this happens, a loss of identity in many ways, home, the sense of home has gone. So what I'll do is read extracts from a poem called Memory, which I think might put this in context, the sense of bewilderment that comes in. Memory. Do memories change when what's remembered is no longer owned? Do your footsteps disappear from those frames of time? Are these feelings yours or taken over? Are you a rose of water climbing on thorns of glass? Whose memories are you retaining? Yours or someone else's? Will anyone retain memory of you? Can you detonate from memory and the memory of things and still be you? Didn't Proust say writers have a blurred memory of things they do not know? Is there a way to cross into glow? Is this wanderlust? Are you a museum of invisible things? Are you made up of people you no longer are? Daughter, sister, granddaughter? Can we heal without memory? Can we live without healing?
Yeah.
And this, I think, is what takes you to the second part, which is, are there answers without questions? And that, to me, leads into the search for questions, also leads to me into a search across time and space, the wanderlust I was talking to you about. So the third part is travel, all kinds of travel to hopefully arrive also at a place of solace, joy, friendship today. Friendship, yes. Thank you.
That's so beautifully put. Priya.
Thank you.
And when you spoke about water and the significance of water, especially in the face of loss, I was reminded of years ago when the tsunami struck the southern
Yeah.
India. There was a little news clip immediately after, say, two days afterwards, that in this particular village, the fisher folk the women gather on the seashore because they have a belief, and this is when their men go out, even in normal times,
Yes.
and don't come back. They say, yes, the sea claims them, but after 3 days, she will return them. So, the women
Mhm.
gather for those 3 days on the seashore, hoping that the men came back. We will now go to the first part of the book, which is Unraveling, and we will each of us read one poem from it. So, may I invite George to please read a poem from Unraveling?
First of all, many congratulations to Priya
Thank
on the
you.
publication of the book, a marvelous book. The
Okay.
poem I shall read is This Is Us. The sky of our body flutters over the ailing, while their unheard words open like jasmine through our inkiness. This is us, sieves through which they pass as the lips of the horizon part. This is us, singing remembrance with mouths of myrrh, each of us alone, though love's phosphorescence rims earth's darkness. This is us, doing our best.
Thank you. It's an honor, George, to have my poems read by you.
Indeed.
Dear friend. Dear friend.
So I would invite Alvin to read a poem from the first part of the book, Unraveling.
Yeah. So first, let me join George in congratulating Priya for this lovely book. I spent the whole of yesterday and today reading through it, and so
Thank you.
it's quite fresh in my memory now, and it's holding together quite beautifully. And I think it was quite canny of Priya to have put together a reading of traveling poets, as it were. Uh, Poets are both in the habit of traveling. This is how we all met, of course, and of poets whose I suppose imaginations and sense of the language ranges across distances. In our writing, and as in yours and in your book, there is a calling over water, isn't there, in various ways. So it's a real pleasure to be reading this piece from your book, Priya, in tribute to that. And this is the figure in the carpet. What's the figure in the carpet? This isn't a Persian spread in amber, pomegranate, and madder red. It's no emperor's dream underfoot of hunting cheetahs, fish ponds, and simurgs, trailing Vibgor tails, each relic dispersed by war, restored and draped on museum walls, flung across the globe, nor woven 2 centuries ago with rosettes, millefleurs, and Christians to bear its lore, the Rothschild Polonaise, the Ballad, Kurokian Hyderabad. No, this carpet is homely, wearing the indent of sibling scuffles, chairs, and memory. An edging of charcoal vines encloses a cerise oval looped to palmettes laid on moss green ground, which changed through chance contact with light and family history. Its red, once the shade of blood, held fast, pales from tips to its base of knots, as if to loosen from the earth of birth. The carpet's green, two-toned dye of sweat and sky, when dazzled by light, dissolves, its color of aged bones, mottled skin, clot of pus of which we're made, dies. What remains is blue, the green turned blue of far hills, the cast of heaven. As Goethe said, the darkness of infinite space seen through atmospheric vapors. This chameleon smear 5x3, it's all I have of home. Rumi, whirling, sang, when the soul lies down in that grass, the world is too full to talk about. Is this the figure I tread as Ma drifts in the wild music of dead stars?
Lovely. Beautifully read and very, very poignant poem. Thank you, Alvin. I'd like to read Priya's poem, Archiving Mother. Names float up her mind. She's mother, I'm daughter. We are separated for the first time. Somewhere, a veil of emerald trembles in the sky as sun rays break Earth's membrane. Somewhere, the soil opens as a mouse pushes out of its hole. Around its head, a shimmer of green grass flames. Somewhere in between, breath mists in and out of my flowering lungs that are smaller than her year. She holds me for the first time, my skin puckered by her fluids, her face a chandrama of love, lantern to my life. I hold her for the last time, moon rubbed up from night's ink before she blows past the horizon. So touching, Priya. Thank you for this poem. It's very special to me. Now, may I invite Priya to read my favorite poem from the book called Neti Neti. Priya.
My mother passed, I couldn't write at all. And one day, towards the tail end of the monsoon, this poem kind of stood up in front of me virtually. It just was there. And Neti Neti, as you know, is an Upanishadic concept. Neti Neti, meaning not this, not that. And it was supposed to be a method of reaching or seeking the self with a capital S, or absolute reality, all that. And my mother had tremendous intellectual curiosity. And whenever she found something, she'd share it with us. And she found another way of interpreting this word, neti, neti. So, this poem for my mother, neti, neti. Not this, not that either, is an inadequate definition of the primal being, she said. The squirming shimmer of creation adrift in the cosmos can't be contained thus, nor the refulgence beyond. So abolish oppositions, Priya. Negate negations, she said. Instead, affirm. Affirm. Expand the concept of the first cause. Come on. Conceive Neti Neti as not only this, not only that, either. A single word can birth universes, don't you see? Inclusiveness was her unyielding oyster, her singularity. Reflecting, I walk alone through puddles of sky. Yeah. Thank you, thank you. So, that's very nice. Thank you.
So much philosophy in that poem, Priya. And what philosophers cannot say, poets end up saying beyond what they say, I think. We go now to we are skipping the section of are there answers without questions, because the poems there are more to be read on the page. They can be read aloud as well, but that would take much longer. So I would urge the listeners to buy the book and read that section
Thank you.
particularly. Um, we go to the third section, which is traveling. And traveling, it is, I believe that traveling is going somewhere and also going inwards. Because when you're out of your usual space, you get the time to go inwards and think about yourself in relation to the world. So we will be reading, and this the three of us will be reading a poem from traveling called Migrations. So may I invite George to begin the first part of this poem, George?
Unmute yourself.
The first of these parts is about the migration of whales. As if in a trance, each alone in a shoal, blue whales migrate, their hides woven and unwoven, a wave and wait, Balaenoptera musculus, or Melville's salt bottom, mottled with diadems, millions of microorganisms that each one supports a sturdy undergrowth, each tongue weighty as an elephant, each heart large as a cow, up to 100 feet long, aging till 90, and more, head towards extinction's red line, ploughing through currents blue, cold, lightning-nerved, or warm, through the ocean's featureless caress, navigating paths that part and seal with each dive. Slender submarines, these cetaceans that pulse and moan, breathing in rhythms of spume, sink, swim, spume, on their annual navigation from Alaska to Acapulco and back, feeding and breeding, calves heaving alongside. Their enemies are few. Some Assyrian whalers after wild meat, ships with savage steel hulls that tunnel misguiding sonar fathoms deep, and whirlpools of orcas, minatory white flowers lunging to bite. What's it to swim, as long arrows skimming beneath brine's vast reflection? To swim steadfast, not rough, driven by more than craving, rather urged by life's secret palpitation, to swim by the pole star lodged within each heart that gives faint direction till destiny's end.
Not so with the migrating elephant herd, Loxodonta africana, who under summer's blare first crossed the desert, then the forest of dead trees with trunks blackened, whose amputated arms point to the wasteland, an arena crisscrossed by so many paths trodden by so many who have passed that direction, distorts, becomes a gaping maze disemboweled by sky that flanked at one end by a gauntlet of lions desperate in this season of starvation to take on elephant. Then the siren's head of water some 12 miles away that summons the scramble of gray, each cloud of 4 tons running on cushion pads, feet plumbed by soft tissue to carry weight, hush sound, though the earth rumbles their coming as seismics spread like rays underground. What's it to trumpet, squeal, bellow also, in infrasonic range as water hits eye as a razor blade of light that could both save and destroy, for among the glitter a mesh of crocs reside. With sinews strained, the stampede begins that they must complete to seek grass and rest, water and hope that this generation of downy calves, if lucky, will finish. Last, the dash to the sacred pasture, flickering altar held in memory from generation to generation, passed by matriarch to daughter, when each life matters so little and so much.
We make our steps a journey from location to location and person to person, dropping calls on the way as the great travel unravels in iris and gland, pubis and thalamus as migrations uncharted, while the invisible glistens, salt and sustenance as patina on stone and cement, film on flower and brick, dew, dewlap, dung, and neon, but its throb is unheard till all weeks disappear, all roots are washed out, the stampede concluded for each entity, and we, Homo sapiens or humanity, lie hidden in earth, in fire, while gleaming breezes loosen another nectarine dawn, routine in its splendor.
Thank you.
Beautiful, beautiful, Priya.
Thank you. Thank you for the wonderful readings. Thank you. Thank you.
Actually, I wish
So-
we could rest and soak in this entire, gamut of emotions from whales to elephants. But we must move on, and we will now come to another section in the traveling. We read from China Suite, and before we begin to read, I would like to ask Priya what has transpired and what is this collection called China Suite in Falling Over Water.
Well, the poems happened because we spent about a month moving from Beijing to in the east to the desert of Dunhuang in the west. And we were trying to do two things. One, of course, follow parts of the Silk Route. So you start with Xi'an and move across and go to Dunhuang. But also we were trying to follow the Northern Buddhist Trail, and that meant we were from Xi'an, we went to Dontan, we went to the Longman Caves, which is enormous. There's nothing like it, I think, quite in India here. And the White Goose Pagoda, the White Horse Pagoda, all of it, till you reach the desert. And there, of course, are the fabulous Magao grottos. And I was, that was breathtaking for me because, we're used to in India, the Ajanta caves, 5th and 6th century, very small compared to the Magao. And we're used to a certain, in the painting in Ajanta, there is what is called the reverse perspective in art historical terms, where the pictures seem to be drifting out of the paintings towards us. Now, this is not the case in Magao. It's flat, but it's vivid. I mean, we have whirlpools of dragons and nymphs with long sleeves. There's activity, an enormous amount of activity, which one didn't associate when coming from the Buddhist caves of Ajanta, but it's vivid and beautiful, and that was what we did. And yes, I came back, and after such a place, I think George has also written a lot of China poems. Am I right? And me and Albin, of course, would be, no, not China, but you will teach.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, just the travel poems. So this is these are the poems that came out of that particular trip.
You were saying it follows the trail of Buddha as he traveled from the east to the west.
No. I meant the Buddhist trail, the monasteries, Wudaishan, the Buddhism.
Yes.
Buddhism, for example, Wudaishan Mountain right there with near Panda territory, cold and chill, So
Yes.
Chinese Buddhism, the track through.
Right, correct. So we'll be reading from this section of the book, and I'd invite George to read the first part.
Well, I'd just like to say before I read it, just reflect a little on the book, which is a marvelous book, and it's got enormous scope. So the geographical scope is only a part of it. We travel across a whole range of emotions and experiences as lamentation and as grandeur, cosmology, language, transmutation. This is something which is Priya is rather brilliant at, which is this kind of semi-transparency in which one thing opens up to another thing. So, I thought I'd just say that before I read that. So I'll read Xi'an.
Thank you.
Grand Mosque Xi'an. Lacquered in late afternoon light, the ancient mosque constellates as a sacred chameleon sought for mingled memory. Turkey, the old desert dream of water surfaces with turquoise tides. The surge of the dragon sheens its winged roof of clays. Here, peace emanates through the proportions of courtyards, clipped shrubs, stippled carved stone basins, fallen light with carved calligraphy in lapis lazuli. Allahu Akbar. The muezzin's call is inflected in Mandarin. Here, the hunting heart quells its hunger. The unfamiliar is welcomed home through beauty.
Beautifully read, George.
So I think it's my turn next, was it?
Yes.
Yeah. I just really wanted to say two things. One is, even though, of course, I have ancestral ties to China, and in fact, on my mother's side, my ancestors on my mother's side came through the Silk Road with the Mongols to China. They were originally descended from the Turkic tribes. And so I've always wanted to visit these places that you write about, Priya. And in fact, George and Priya have both traveled more extensively in China than I have. And certainly written about it more than I have. But I hope to catch up one day once we can, in fact, travel again. And it was a real pleasure reading your take on these places, which are, of course, landmarks and milestones of world culture, but also of a more intimate sense of culture and history, isn't it? And you write not just as a tourist, but with a real sense of the way in which the place, its history, its narratives are sort of underwritten by a basic humanity and spirit, and that's what I really enjoyed in the poems. So I'm going to read, Priya, of the two pieces you asked me to choose from. I'm going to read Dunhuang, the shorter one, because I think for me it resonates with that sense of spirit, right? So, Dunhuang. The desert is a door handle. Push to enter. Hear the dromedary's heart breathing. The small plain overhead. Large grain sand scrunching underfoot. Your stilled breath, cause you think you're where time stretches to a stop. But it's just you on a camel, trudging in a space where sky and earth carve separate entities. Memories, like photographs, live in the continuous present, though their grains alter each time you enter. Make yourself into a memory.
Thank you. Thank you.
Wonderful.
Thank
Thank you, Anne. And in fact, I think we should travel to China together, the four of us, so that Priya can. Priya can
No, all of them we learn.
Yes.
So that'd be a dream.
Sorry. I would like to read Priya's poem in the China Suite called Great Wall at the 14th Guard Tower, commissioned in 1404. Afternoon. How old was the first guard? How often did he race up these steep steps? Where in this bare room did he kindle fire to signal, cook, keep warm? Were his nails cracked, teeth crooked, lips chapped? And did he whistle while viewing this desolate beauty that illuminates loneliness like a comet scarring the sky? Night. This octagonal stone room with 3 window slits was his gusty shelter. As he slept, did starlight drape him in its speckled sheet, scented with piss that rose off the steps? Did the wind slip its fingers beneath his clothes? Far away, his wife has died in childbirth. Far away, a crescent moon strummed passing clouds. Did his child survive in its 4th year? Dawn. Did he scan the empty sky with a thirst nothing can quench? For he, like me, did not know what to seek. Barren enchantment presses its lips to the horizon as it did for him. Did he ever return home?
Thank you.
Beautiful prayer.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. Anjali, if I may, I think we have about 15 minutes left or 10 minutes left. I was wondering if I could take up Alvin's suggestion a little while ago and read Samarkand as my final poem, because that's also on the Silk Route.
Yes.
And it ties up, I think, as Alvin pointed out, the various strands woven here. False start, pardon me. Samarkand. When she was mom and I was child, she told me stories of Samarkand, her favorite fable land. I'd forgotten these as I strolled down its broad, clean avenues and tourist promenades, nibbling at its specialty of apricots wrapped in melon flesh, banqueted beneath a bough of vines and slender pomegranate trees, between whose shadowed leaves faint stars shine. I miss my mum. And wander through shops displaying dazzling tiles, carpets of silk and embroidered quotes that cry, "Come take me home." I miss my mom. And visit the grand Registani mosque and madrasas lit for the concert at night, where musicians present fair, Soviet style, from all the regions of the state. I miss my mom. while colored bulbs illuminate domes and arches in garish regularity, and over wine we discuss who sang best and why, and wonder at Ulugh Beg's observatory, part tunnel, part dome, glory turned to rubble, from which you observe the planets with the naked eye, and the Bibi Khayyam Mosque, beloved wife of Amir Timur, and his own mausoleum, the Gur-e-Allah Amir. I miss my mom, on which the Taj Mahal is based. Before we leave, I buy an envelope of thick mulberry paper to stuff with my love for her, which I seal. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
Priya, just you also wanted to read a poem called Wonder.
Yes, but I think that, if there's, if you could perhaps just talk a little, maybe, are you guys up to it? Yeah?
Sure.
Yeah? Would you like to discuss any, not discuss, just chat? Yeah?
Absolutely.
Yeah, life in the pandemic, poetry in the pandemic, and releasing a book here with my dear friends during the pandemic.
Priya, how long has the book been making? What space is there time between the earliest poems and the latest poems in it?
10 years, George. 10 years, I think. I wrote, I think, as a matter of fact, when did I last visit you in your house? That was about 10 years ago, I think.
I lose
And
track.
I'd written my...
Long time. Too long.
Long time, yes, too long. I remember I'd written the first poem to my father there, which we read out together. Yeah. That was then. And then these poems. And as I said, I don't know why, after I completed it, I just held on to it for a couple of years. And then my...
I ask one more thing, then I'll hand over to Alvin, or go back to Anjali. There are interesting poems right at the beginning, which are in prose, but which are footnotes. And I was fascinated by the interplay between the footnotes and the main text. So I'm saying more about it.
Pardon your last, and you're saying? Yes, the footnotes and the text here.
Yeah,
showing this.
A way of creating a kind of dialogue.
Thank you. Yes. I also think that there is a sense of unreality when you're experiencing the loss of someone. Somehow life seems to go on, but it's not. You expect the sea to rear up. I think that is why the footnotes came in and the way it was tied up. A secret life, the life lived, some of those things that came in. Thank you. I'm glad you like this poem.
I do.
Yes. Thank you.
Yeah. I loved the prose poems at the start. I actually wanted more of them. Next book, perhaps. I love the interplay of different styles in the book. So I just particularly liked the prose poems at the start. It's partly because I've been writing more prose poems myself recently. I also was fascinated by the way in which, and it's completely appropriate, of course, given that this is a book about memory and what does one do with the tapestry of one's life that is woven of all these different threads, some of which are other people's lives, right? Like the threads that make up who we are include compositions, include strands of other people, parents, lovers, whatever. I just was also curious that your own past lives and literary lives are sort of woven into the text. I found it very pleasurable to come across, for example, your own clone character from your science fiction showing up. I correct me if I'm wrong, but I heard echoes of Andal and your translations of Andal. and the spirit of that coming through as well. So it's you're composing with your other selves as well, which I thought was great fun. Certainly added to the book for me. Could you say a little bit about that?
Well, I'm really, yeah, I think, yes, there are different styles, yes. And I think also, in the poem you mentioned about me referring to my work, Clone, the idea of lost languages, lost messages, that is very important to me. The idea of play and what you can do with language. There's another poem about proverbs, and only the nastiest ones are kept there because I was raging. And, so that was there. But Andal too, I mean, I remember your beautiful poem, Alvin, on Andal. I mean, it's fantastic. She just soaked into you, and you were so empathetic to her. So I think there are some influences that just, or some emotions that run so deep that they intermingle. And when you're putting out all this is my most, shall we say, personal book, because I normally write in the third person, or I adopt personas. So this was one where I let go of everything, I think, and just let myself be, which also explains the styles, maybe. So
there's a lot of playfulness in the book, actually.
Thank you.
Playful, there are language sort of games. So it's a fascinating balance between the lamentations, the mournings, which I think in a way is an richness of that mourning, which is what I take away most of it. But then it's interlaced with these playful games, the language games, the sheer pleasure in sound, actually. There's again, it's something else which has always been there, I think, in Priya's poetry, which is a sort of high voluptuousness of sound. It's a pleasure saying things. They hang nicely in the mouth. They're lovely.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. So, right.
I think, Priya, the way you use space on the page, like George was saying, in footnotes. So there's just 1, 2, 3, 4, and then, and that is not just for the design of it, but it means that empty space means so much, and the way you can put it out is very, very beautiful.
I think also that the footnotes, what's fascinating about them, they don't do what footnotes normally do. They don't take what they do is, in fact, a ghost poem next to the poem. I've known novels which have had footnotes at the side, or in fact, 2-column novels. But I think this was very particularly beautifully used, because essentially we were getting sometimes a statement in the main prose poem was plainer, but the footnote is where the metaphorical richness came in, and that's sort of playing between two voices in a way, or two levels of voice, or two ways of a voice addressing a subject. I thought, I agree with Alvin. But I think that'd be nice. It's a nice way to go.
Beautiful, beautiful. Priya, think. Oh, am I still muted? No.
No.
You can't. No. Yeah. So we have, I think, about last 3 or 4 minutes. Would you like to read? Do you have favorites amongst these children that you have in the book? I mean, is there a favorite poem that you have?
I think that would depend on the day.
That
really, because everything changes, right? So maybe if there are no questions which are coming in yet, maybe I will read that poem, the last poem, Wonder, which in a sense, I wanted to read, which in a sense brings together the language and the poetry, the sense of travel in and out. It's one of the last poems in the book. Wonder. Under phosphorescing skies, I'm a compass with the needle missing. The pole star wanders, shedding light. Hurtling embers lace space, each a graze, a syllable. Galaxies reel, spilling the language of time. Mysteries, alphabets singe nebula, strum stellar winds. In which transparency do you hide? Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
Yes. Lovely.
And thank you.
We don't seem to have any questions, and we have exactly 3 minutes left. So, George, any remarks concluding?
Well,
George has
thinking about traveling, thinking about migrations. I think
right.
nature is full of migrations.
Yes.
Creatures move, and we move. I mean, historically speaking, human beings have always moved. My own life has been one of moving from one place to another. So my family were migrants, and I think this whole business of belonging and traveling, or belonging perhaps to a migratory species, or a migratory tribe, which it doesn't in fact form a tribe, is a fascinating one for us at a period which it seems to me, in Europe particularly, and I'd be interested to know what took place in India, or indeed in Singapore, which is where people are asserting, if you like, the narrowness yet intensity of being of being planted within the local. So the balance between, I'd be interested in seeing, in hearing both Priya and Alvin and Anjali, what you think about that, or if you experienced it yourself.
George, I mean, it's a very large question, honestly, and a very important one, especially in today's times. But I think we'll call another session, which surely we will again to discuss this book all over again, because at every meeting you get new facets of the poetry. I think Priya wants to say something.
Yes, I just wanted to say once again, this is so special. Thank you, folks. It's been enormously important, and I've been waiting for this launch, and it's finally happened with my dear friends, and I loved it. Thank you. Thank you.
Can I just very quickly add something?
Yes, please do.
Yeah. So I just wanted to say thank you for having me to this. Thank you, and once again, congratulations, Priya, for your book. And to answer George's question, I would like to quote a line from one of my favorite poems from the book. So Priya's words, where, and it's from the poem The Body, and one of the needs of the body that Priya lists is the need to go to the place where mind, heart, and flesh are aligned. It wants to be taken there. And to me, that basic longing is one of the drivers of why people move from here to there. So it's Priya answering.
Yes.
No, that's beautiful. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you for an exciting session. We hope all our listeners had a wonderful experience. This, viewers, concludes our final session of day 3 at Studio 2. This marks our second last session of PILF 2020. It has been a great day with so many amazing and enlightening sessions. We hope all of you enjoyed it. We thank you for enjoying and showing us immense support this year in spite of this unfavorable conditions the pandemic has created. We hope to see all of you next year, for we will have more eminent speakers to bring you more interesting sessions. The 8th edition of Pune International Literary Festival 2020 is brought to you by Vishwakarma Publications. We would like to extend our thanks to our international partners, Alliance Francaise, Salzburg Global Seminar, Embassy of Portugal, Goethe Institute Max Muller Bhavan, Institute Francais India, Literature Across Frontiers, Literary Europe Live, Creative Europe program of the European Union, and of course, our participating publishers, Bloomsbury, Readomania, HarperCollins, Westland, Speaking Tiger, and Sage Publications. Until then, goodbye. Thank you.